For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, we are live and amplified. So let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome, everybody, to another live and amplified podcast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Win Meets West. What's going on today, man?
Hey, what's up? Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. When I was looking at your Facebook page, all I saw was LA, and I realized, like, when I was preparing for this interview, for whatever reason, all I saw was LA, and I saw what time our podcast was. I was like, either this guy is such an early bird or he doesn't live in LA anymore. And then I started putting two to two together and I was like, no, he lives in New York. Okay, fine. He's not as early bird as I thought he was.
I mean, I do like sunrises in LA, so it wouldn't be totally past me, but yeah, LA born and based now, yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, like waking up at 7 a.m. to do a podcast is just like, oof, I feel bad now. Let me see if I should probably get a hold of him and see if he wants to. But then I saw you were in New York and I'm like, okay, cool. No, it's not as early as I thought it was. So, but first off, before we kind of jump into everything, I want to thank you very much for rescheduling, because I was originally supposed to have you on before Christmas, but because the holidays, yeah, that was a mess and a half. But thank you for rescheduling. I'm glad we got you on this morning.
Yeah.
So for the people that aren't familiar with who you are, can you kind of give us a brief rundown on who you are and what got you into music?
Sure. I'm Win Meets West. My real name is Tony. I have been doing the indie pop singer-songwriter thing for about like a year and a half. So that's been my life. I used to be a software engineer. So I've been into music my whole entire life. But for a lot of different reasons, one being I had immigrant parents who really didn't understand like what a music industry career would look like. They're like, you have to be a star, you have to be Whitney Houston to like have a life in music. That was one thing that held me back. And then the second thing was an internal thing where I couldn't see myself as an artist. And that's something I've like really learned, especially coming into 2021, like what I want to do.
Yeah.
My mission as an artist is to create a space, whether it be virtual at my shows or through my music, for people to explore their own emotions and be their authentic selves, right? Because I think a lot of people, me included, right, they try to live lives that are expected of them. They try to like balance all these outward facing pressures. Yeah. But really, it's what life do you want to live? Because that's the one that you deserve, the one that you internally like, this is the one I want to go for and like work at every day. So I hope that my story inspires people in that way.
Awesome. You know, and it's really cool that you're trying to build that space for people to kind of be their authentic selves. Sorry, morning brain, still working itself out. But you know, and just kind of like not enforcing, but like building that space where opinions essentially don't matter and just kind of be who you want to be. Is that kind of where you're going with it? Or
yeah, it's like, well, even more so. I mean, this is more of my personal opinion. Yeah. There are opinions that will matter to you, like the people you love and support you and like know you. Yeah. But I think a lot of people are like, I have to like, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this. If you're down for the standard path of going to college, getting a degree, going into that industry, blah, 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 right? If you're into that, that's cool. I came from tech and there's a lot of like runway, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people want a different kind of life with different things. Like maybe they don't care about having a family. Maybe they want to do creative ventures. Maybe they want to have their own business. Like it can be anything that's not like what's prescribed, like in school, right? That's really what I'm talking about.
Okay, gotcha. So you're in New York currently. How long have you been in New York?
Been here since 2018. Yeah, okay. July 2018.
And you'd been out in LA previously your entire life, or did you kind of move around?
So I was born in LA. I was born by the beach, Manhattan Beach. Shout out. And then I went to school in Boston because I wanted like a really big change. because I'd lived there my whole life. I'm like, LA is kind of,
That is a really big change, by the way. For the people that don't understand, that is a huge change.
what's wrong with Boston? I went to school there, so it was easy.
No. Like my buddy, my sound engineer's from Worcester, which is
Oh no way.
yeah. And so like he moved out to New Mexico about 8 years. What do you say? 8 years ago, I guess at this point. And like all I hear is about how the big difference and the big change. But yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, I went to Boston, and then I've always wanted to live in New York because I was. This is an embarrassing story. I was in Times Square as a high schooler on our Carnegie Hall trip, and apparently that was my aha moment to move to New York. So embarrassed about it now living here, but yeah, I just felt like the energy of the city really reflected who I wanted to be. So
gotcha.
I've always known I'd end up here. And it took, like as much as I like don't like the software engineer thing, like it did get me to New York. So
Yeah,
who am I to say?
yeah,
No regrets here about like doing other things with my life before music.
gotcha. So do you? I mean, well, you just said you don't regret going to school to do the software engineer thing. If you know, or if you had the mind or the perspective that you do now, would you have started doing music professionally sooner, or do you think you would have still continued down the path you are?
I
Like,
think it was really important for me to have the life experiences I had
mhm,
in university, which was
okay,
just like being at a totally different, like, I guess the main thing that I needed to experience to be the musician I am was being in a life that I didn't want,
yeah,
but others wanted for me. So that whole path of like being a software engineer, like trying to like balance what my immigrant parents wanted versus what I wanted, and like making compromises, keep compromising on myself. Like if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be the artist I am. Honestly, like I would. I mean, there's not, like I said, nothing wrong with that. But
yeah,
I would have been a working musician probably, and
yeah,
that's why I always imagined myself being prior to going to university and like giving up on music school. But lately, I've been like really feeling the artist thing because I've just been connecting with more people, even in our time with like live streams and being online. Like people have reached out to me, be like, "Your story inspires me to do like things I wouldn't have done."
yeah,
I think having that it gives me the purpose.
yeah.
That's
I
so
got you.
loaded. Purpose, right? The purpose in my life that I really wanted.
Yeah,
So no regrets there. Though I
got
would have liked to have the networking, but you know.
yeah, I got you.
Okay.
So after seeing some of your videos and kind of looking at your setup, it looks like you're a pretty well-versed multi-instrumentalist because I see, is that a piano to your right? I
Oh
think
yeah,
it,
my synthesizer.
oh,
Oh,
that's yours.
I love.
And then you got some, it looks like guitars, and saw some videos where you were playing like violin, I think. And
I was playing. So I play guitar and bass guitar, and then I play Ableton Push. So yeah, multi instrumentalist. Because now I'm like, I used to be just like that singer songwriter in the back of the bedroom, like singing my songs on a breathy voice on acoustic guitar. But nowadays I play. I'm like pop. I'm a pop
nice.
musician, pop producer.
Um,
I got to put everything.
so guitar was your first instrument, or what was your first instrument you were introduced to?
Technically, it was piano, but
Okay.
I hated it. I was like 4, and like I would like put the timer that my parents set for me to practice, and then I learned how to manipulate it. So I would
Yeah.
just dial it down. So I hated piano. And I picked it up later and learned to love it. But yeah, guitar was my first love, I'd say, just because I was listening to like Red Hot Chili Peppers and like Coldplay, U2, like all these guitar heavy bands.
Yeah.
So Foo Fighters, Foo Fighters, wow, that was a throwback. But yeah, that's how I got into guitar, and that was my first love for sure.
Nice. And so let's go ahead and jump into some of your new music here. You just released a lyric video for Technicolor, which is your most recent single, correct?
Yeah, it is.
What's kind of the story behind that?
The lyric video.
Or no, the song in general.
Oh,
Sorry.
in general. Yeah,
The
no
song.
worries. All good. Let's see. The story is it was that time in like, quarantine fatigue where I just like kind of was starting to lose hope a bit. And I feel like and this is something I think about a lot, like when we're in a place where we can't do anything about like our situation or we're like stuck, I try to remember like how I get out of those things. And how I do that is I draw upon the memories I had prior to that, like really good memories, like of being with my friends, of going on dates in New York City, of like running around and being like a young person, right?
Yeah.
Like, because we're all stuck inside. So that song was really a place of how do I draw the joy of my memories to provide hope for the future. And in that song, I use my partner I'm dating, so when I live with them, I've used her as like kind of the perspective to do that. Like, how do I remember all the good times we had so we can have hope for the future? And that's where that song came from. And where it ended up was like this really cool like indie pop mix because I've been getting more and more experimental. And that song was the first song I did with my best friend producer. Like we've known each other since middle school.
Oh
So he
wow.
got something out of me that I never knew. Like vocal performances, production wise. It was like a really good time.
Nice. That's awesome. And then, so that was a strictly pandemic project, something that came out of the pandemic. And then, of course, you released a lyric video for it. What was it, last month? December?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like December,
Or
yeah.
no, November. My bad.
That's all good.
I
Time.
was sitting here, I'm like, I don't even know what month it is anymore. Like the essence of time means nothing to me. Whew.
For real.
So you released a lyric video for it, and did you like? There's shots of you in it, so that was you out during the pandemic shooting it, or was that stuff shot previously?
Oh no, my partner and I went to the park and we shot
Okay,
outdoors in the park, super last minute.
nice.
Yeah. Safe as possible, trying to be outdoors and away from other people. But yeah, that's where we got the shots. And also we live by Prospect Park in New York. So I'm like, what
That's
better
dope.
place? Especially with like the autumn leaves turning, it just really fit the song. And it's super
Yeah,
spontaneous.
yeah. It's one of those things where it's like there's only so much you can do staying inside. Eventually, it's just kind of like, yo, I need to get out. I need to do something. I need to. So I
Yeah.
I, I completely get it. Um, and this is your first lyric video you've released for your music, or do you have stuff released previously?
So I have other music videos. So
Mhm.
Chasing, the one, my best music video, in my opinion, is Chasing because it has all this like, what's it called? Rotoscoping.
Mhm.
It's like really beautiful and like really well done. Like the
Yeah.
director I worked with was amazing. And then I have another music video with my friend Tom Fuble. We released this song called "All My Friends Are Fucking Lonely," and it's just us dancing in our bedrooms. So I'm like, that's the other quarantine music video I did because it's just silly. This one again, like just gets more and more. I feel like people understand we're in quarantine, so you
Yeah.
can like get away with more homemade stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lovingly janky music videos.
Yeah.
Heart,
Well, and I mean, now is just kind of the time to get creative and just go for it.
Yeah,
And just the name of All My Friends Are Fucking Lonely is like the perfect, and I mean just perfect title for a song to encapture the quarantine.
yeah. I mean, and what's funny is that that song was written before everything happened. We wrote it
Yeah.
like a year before, and then we released it like right in the like smack dab in the middle, like March, April. I'm like, the skies have up, even though it really sucked for everyone. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, a song that can really capture what we're all feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just one of those things where right song, right time, right place,
yeah,
even though you had written it before the pandemic was even a real threat here.
yeah.
That's that's just fate, honestly. Like,
I mean, I'm glad people I see on the Spotify stats there are people who streamed it a lot. I'm like, oh, I'm glad it found a home, y'all.
nice. Yo. That's funny. So where are you kind of at creatively right now? Are you always kind of writing music, or where are you kind of at creatively?
Yeah, so right now I'm doing something totally new. I've been writing music for a while, since I was in middle school, angsty song, Oasis coffee song. But now I'm doing like a thing where I'm writing for an EP album, which is
Okay,
great. I'm like,
guys.
oh, full length work. Yeah, I just wanted to make an artistic statement about mental health in general. So my current vision, and it's open to change as we've all seen.
Yeah.
Who knows where the year will take us? But currently, I'm planning some full length release album or EP toward the end of the year, and I want it to be a album all about mental health. So my current concept is it'll run through starting from that depressive cycle when you're entering it and that anxiety spiral and like what that means to people and what that means to me and like how does that suck me down and like what are the things that suck me down. And then I want to take the listener through a journey of okay, how do I find healing and recovery, and then how do I find joy again. That's my current concept.
Hey, we're back.
No worries.
I was sitting here. I was like, Oh, my internet's lagging. Okay, that's not a big issue. And then all of a sudden you just cut off completely. And I was like, oh, that's a big issue. Hold on 1 second. What's going on here?
Such as the age we live in.
Yep, yep. Okay. So we were talking about your new EP
Yeah.
that you're working on. Is Technicolor going to be a part of that
No,
album, or is that just going to be a standalone single?
so Technicolor is my last standalone single that's not part of a work because
Okay.
I'm also changing my name to better reflect who I am as
Okay.
an artist. I mean, that'll be announced soon, but Wind Meets West for now. But I definitely want to, especially with like how I've been pushed. Like this goes back to like my whole theme of things people tell you and expect of you. Everyone's like, you have to release singles all the time to be relevant. But I'm also like, wait a minute. But that's not what I want to do as an artist. Like I want to make statements about like things that I care about. So I'll be releasing under a new name and also just being more polished because,
Yes.
I feel
Yeah.
like I think New York has a tendency to push you to be a hustler and like,
Yeah.
oh, you're doing stuff and stuff is up. But I'm just learning I need to slow down. Like I
Yeah.
just turned 25. So I'm like learning some lessons as I get older. Come on. That's
Yeah.
what growth is all about.
I completely got you.
Yeah.
Um. So you're kind of going through a brand change. Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's like I'm really figuring out what I want to say as an artist. So I think a new name will reflect that. Because Wind Meets West is like a really old name from like university. So I'm
Yeah.
like, might as well do something new.
Since we're kind of saying goodbye to Wind Meets West, where did that name come from, or how'd you come up with that name?
This is a big reason why I'm changing it. It was just like kind of a late night college thing where I'm like, my last name's Win. It sounds like Wind meets West because I'm from LA. Like, which is cool, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
that was cool for a while, but I think, especially where my music is wanting to go, I just want a different name.
Yeah.
It's gonna be so. Some names I have right now. The top one is Zadin, which is a derivative of the Vietnamese word for family. So
Okay.
that feels more aligned with what I want to do with my music, right? Because I want to create community. I mean, I don't want to be like a cult, but like a family of like people who can come together and feel safe to listen in my music, in my spaces, especially with me doing more Twitch streaming and more video content. I want people to be able to identify in
Yeah.
that way.
And I think by like not saying you're shrinking your name down, but making it more like easier to say, easier to roll off the tongue.
Yeah.
Because like Wind Meets West, it's like a lot to say for if you're at least from my perspective, it's just like a lot to say for a musician as far as hi, I'm Wind Meets West. And whereas if you go in and what was the top contender for your
Oh,
what is it?
Zadin.
Okay. I'm not even going to try and pronounce it because I will butcher it so bad.
Well,
So,
that's the test. If you can pronounce it, if anyone can pronounce it, we're cool. But no worries, no worries.
uh, so, well, you touched on something interesting when you were talking about your new album that you're working on. It was about the singles and how somebody told you to stay relevant, you have to just keep continually releasing singles. And it's like I don't disagree, but I also don't agree.
Yeah,
And
I think I've like really had an amazing experience getting more mentors through
Mhm.
like just being like that's the one thing that surprised me about being a musician. Just how kind people are and like willing to like stop and like literally the other day one of my mentors, it was midnight, he's like, here, let me show you how to find like quality press. I'm like, what? Like at like midnight, right before he's about to go to bed. Anyway, so tangent. Basically, I think about like, and this is more of like a business thing, like how many artists have gotten like notoriety from like only releasing singles.
yeah,
You can't really think of too many. So that
well,
older model is still relevant, but
yeah.
thinking about it, like what do I
Well,
really
like even during 2020 with the pandemic going on, singles was kind of the way to go because you can't really get out and do shows. Like depending on where you're at, like here in Texas, we had maybe a 3 month run where we didn't have shows,
Mhm.
but that's not the same across the country. Like for the most part, shows have been shut down. And so, how are you going to like if you're getting ready to release a full length album? How are you going to promote it? How are you going to like you put it out in one shot 3 months later? Unless you're out doing shows consistently, it's pretty much dead in the water. Where if you're doing like singles, at least during the pandemic being, If you're doing singles, you're staying relevant, you're staying out there. But as shows start to open, there's no reason why you can't do a full body of work, because you're going to get out, you're going to do shows, you're going to play other places, and it's going to be a new audience to hear your music. So it's going to have longer legs. So the idea of singles was good when you couldn't do shows, but now that shows, hopefully, I say hopefully,
You
will
know,
open up back up in 2021, releasing a full body of music is going to get you the same amount of legs as releasing 6, 8, 10 singles.
yeah, exactly. Also, I think people are just getting tired of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
And
feel like my fans are like, "When's your album coming?" I'm like, "Oh, you want it now, huh?" Like,
are you have you given any thought about like pressing vinyl, or are you going to just do 100% digital? Like, what's kind of the release strategy you're looking at?
honestly, I'm gonna look at like what my because I really do love physical stuff, and
Yeah.
like, and that's even past like how I grew up. Like, I didn't have vinyl or anything. Like, I had CDs, and we used to burn CDs. But I think digging into that, like people who are in my inner circle really want something to hold. So I think vinyl is definitely on the table. I also really like how cassette tapes look. I know that's like super not. I mean, it's less indie than vinyl, but like I think cassettes are also really because you can have really nice art on it in the square. Yeah, and then my other goal this year is just to work with more people. So if that means a whole vinyl sleeve,
Yeah.
that would be super cool. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do
Like
you ask though? Are you?
well, because I prefer vinyl. Like I didn't grow up in the vinyl area. I was born in 87, so like I was in the more cassette tape era. But I remember as a kid, my mom, when I was in like early grade school, like first, second, third, fourth grade, my mom gave me her old vinyl player with all her old vinyl. And I could never get it to work 100% right. A, because I didn't know what I was doing, and B, vinyl was such a foreign concept. But like looking back at it now, it's like I wish I still had all that vinyl. Like just because I remember looking at the covers and being like, wow, these covers are really cool, and it's like big and it's like a piece of art. And now that they're starting to come back, I'm seeing like some of the really cool stuff they're doing with vinyl, like just on a purely physical, just kind of looking at it. So you got like really cool covers, and now like the vinyl themselves, they're doing really cool concepts. Like the I'm still waiting for this vinyl to come in, but there's this band out of Nashville. They're like a punk band, and they did a whole vinyl where the actual album, like the actual physical vinyl album, is tie dye.
Ooh, so like Third Man Records, like their work.
Yeah, yeah. And
So
so like the record itself, and so it's just like the cool things people are doing nowadays, and it's like, okay, I want to collect that, even if I don't listen to the vinyl itself. Like just having that piece of artwork, and knowing that they're limited runs. A lot of the musicians, because vinyl is so expensive, they're doing cool things where it's like, oh, if you buy my Red album, it's one of 400, and that's all we're ever going to print. So like if they make it big, it's like, hey, I've got one of 400 albums that only 399 people have. So it's just one of those things where I look at it as collecting art.
mhm.
So, but that's my little spiel. I like vinyl, and whenever I'm at shows, if they have a vinyl record, I'm probably going to buy that over like a CD or something. So,
I still need to do merch though. That's something new I'm gonna try this year as well. I'm just getting more and more visual as
yeah,
that's how I know I'm like growing into my artist form. I'm like, what do I want to do? I'm like imagining all these different characters for my new um artist persona because I wanted to embody different um emotional states that I'm in. So it's super artsy.
yeah,
Very not like what I'm doing now, but it's cool.
I
Yeah.
got you. And then of course you mentioned that you started going into like the live streaming on Twitch, which is really interesting because Twitch, I was a part of like the early versions of the Twitch community. So like Justin.tv was like an early version of Twitch. And then of course Twitch came out and it was 100% for gamers. And now you're starting to see this music community grow on Twitch. How at what point did you kind of decide, okay, I need to be part of Twitch and need to get involved in what's going on there.
Yeah. So last year I've been live streaming on so many different platforms because there are just people offering money, being
Yeah,
real. People were offering money like for me to stream on like different platforms. I probably
yeah,
shouldn't say who, but I've been streaming on a bunch of different platforms. And the reason I landed on Twitch was because last like 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. Wow, yeah, it was 2 weeks ago. I did this fundraiser live stream,
mhm,
and it just was the first time I felt like super like I felt that live spirit,
yeah,
live performance spirit, and like I kind of felt it with the other ones, but I just realized like the limit I could push for like a live show on a live stream because we had like lights and like I was doing my electronic set rather than my acoustic set. So I just really felt that energy. And even though like it was live stream, I saw like the chat flying at me. So I'm just want to commit this year to doing more live shows. And the other reason is just I want to keep up my chops. Um,
gotcha.
I want to like be like I want to perform on the regular. So when just shows do to come back, like I can really knock it out of the park.
Yeah,
So and it's just like a regular way. I have fans from all over the world. Like there's one in Saudi Arabia, for example. I'm like, I should probably do some shows that aren't at like 8 p.m.
yeah,
Eastern time so she can come. So I want to do more. I just want to have more consistent shows at a normal time. Also, another thing I'm really liking the idea of is being the soundtrack to people's workday. So if
yeah,
I'm at like 3 p.m. on Eastern time, I'm like, oh, I can be like the thing you put on
yeah,
for a little joy while you're working. So
yeah.
there are a lot of different reasons I stay.
Yeah. And that's something that I've struggled with this podcast on is because I want to open it up to as many people as possible. But I've kind of come to that realization that somebody's going to get left out at some point. Like we've got a huge following in New Zealand and Australia. We got a huge following over in the UK. We're starting to grow in the Middle East, which was a weird thing for me to get over. Like we've got a nice little following growing there. And it's just like, how do I kind of balance everything? And make sure, okay, I have windows open for everyone, but eventually somebody's going to get left out, and unfortunately, you know but right now you can definitely tell where our window is, just because like on the weekends I'll get up early and do the morning ones, so that kind of keeps the UK and East open, and then I'll come on and do night ones, which kind of keeps everybody to the West happy. So like I understand the struggle of trying to be available for all your fans.
Yeah, exactly. And also one of my this is just kind of a tangent, but one of my friends, his artist name is Boy, but Baby Boy Blue.
Uh-huh.
Uh, he had this amazing TikTok about like how can artists be like I'm a local artist and like only invest on the laurels of their local scene. Like no artist, like being an artist is so global now. You have to
Yeah,
have a wide reach and reach all across. So I always think that conversation is interesting because like the game has changed so fundamentally, especially with
yeah,
I think if anything, quarantine has only like pulled back the curtain about how you have to be everywhere all at once, all the time.
yeah.
Which is
Yeah,
exhausting.
well, and I was listening to actually Gary Vaynerchuk was doing a released a video, I think it was yesterday or a couple days ago. And he had Kevin O'Leary on, and they were talking about how like just traditional businesses have had to digitize and move online to content creation to stay relevant, where now they're hiring like content creators, musicians, video editor, and like just all these people to create content. And he was like, all like we were headed in this direction of everything being online and everything being digital, but COVID just accelerated it to the nth degree. And now we're like 10 years ahead of where we would have been had COVID not hit.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
and just kind of like the music industry in general, although it was already a pretty global industry, now even on the independent level, you got to think globally to, you know, which is interesting because I think there's definitely a pocket of people that can survive as a local independent musician. Like if you can get gigs and just kind of build your following that way. So like, I mean, there's an interesting like couple like that's the one thing about the music industry and just business in general is there's no one right way.
Mhm.
Like you can have success in any way. Like anything's possible in the music business.
Exactly. I mean, that's the beauty of being a creative entrepreneur or freelancer. You can do what you can basically make the career that you want for yourself. I mean, with a
Yeah.
lot more, but you know. That's something I really enjoy about this life so much.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So one thing that we like to do on Live and Amplified is pass on knowledge to younger musicians. So I want to take the next couple of minutes and kind of run with that platform. Um, what is one piece of advice you would give a young musician that is maybe getting ready to take that next step in their career, or they're getting ready to take that first step?
Oh man, I have to think about what I tell all the people I mentor. One thing, okay.
Or if it's multiple things, like I'm not a stickler for.
I'm like, well, the first thing I always tell people is if you, and it's so obvious, but it's honestly like I can't believe how many times I have to tell people, if you don't think your music's good, then no one else will.
Yeah,
Like just straight up. I think people really forget that like it's not attractive or good for you, your mental health or your brand or your music to be bashful and be like, my music sucks, I'm just gonna put it out there, you know. So that's number one. Just if you don't think your music's good, then make better music, first of
yeah,
all. And the second thing is just believe your music's good, and then you can actually get it out to people. Number two is what was it? Like just there's so much work into being an artist. So I always ask my mentees, like, do you want to be an artist or do you want to be a musician? Like those are kind of they're related, but they're different categories. So like things like, can you talk on a podcast? Can you like
yeah,
market yourself? Can you talk about yourself? Can
yeah,
you build a brand? I think that's something that even if you're a session musician or producer, like I'm a producer as well, like you have to have a brand out there.
yeah,
So being able to have that outward facing appearance, like run a social media. And that goes to my last point, which is no one is owed no one owes you their attention.
yeah,
I think a lot of young artists get discouraged when like, oh, I'm not getting 1,000 streams on my first single. I'm like, well, you didn't do a marketing campaign. You didn't do anything. Like you didn't put in the work to like get people's attention. So that would be honestly, and it's kind of a cold thing to say, but you can't expect people to listen to you and love your music and love you unless you put that energy out. Like
yeah,
you have to like show yourself off. You have to talk about yourself.
yeah.
Can't be
But
bashful.
I mean, you touch on a very good point there, and it's a harsh thing to say, but it's real. Is nobody nobody owes you anything. Like you have to go out there and earn it. Like whether it's their respect or whether it's their attention, whatever it is, no one owes you anything.
Yeah.
And like I know I kind of took it in a broader respect or aspect, but it's very true. Like you brought up somebody or just in general, like somebody doesn't get 1,000 streams and they're wondering why. It's like, well, did you run a campaign? Did you do this? Did you do that? Like people just like it goes back to the old saying of you don't know what you don't know. And
Mhm.
that just applies in general. Like if they don't know you exist or they don't know you have new music, they're not going to know to go check it out.
Exactly. And honestly, I want to flip it to the positive side too of just so it's not a total shit fest. Like
Yeah, I got you.
people like everyone makes these mistakes. I made these mistakes too. Like I used to release singles and not tell anybody about it because I was shy.
Yeah,
I'm like, I don't want to bully people, but like you have to tell people 7 times before they actually go do something, right?
yeah,
So the last thing is when you're an artist, like or when you're a musician doing anything in life, like turn that failure into fuel for your future endeavors. Like just
yeah.
learn from it. Like there's no
But,
use in, like beating
I
yourself.
mean, the only real mistake you could possibly make is not learning from your mistakes. That's the only real mistake you could make.
Yeah, I mean, just to be transparent, totally transparent. So one of my songs got taken down because I worked. I've been experimenting with paid playlisting, right? And one of my songs got taken down the Spotify purge, right? And
Yeah,
like, I think if I was at the beginning of my career, I would have been totally devastated.
yeah,
But now I'm like, well, just don't do it again. Like, you just take it in stride. Like, I learned from it. I know how to better market my songs now without using paid playlisting. And you just keep moving forward. This is also a PSA not to use paid playlisting because Spotify's cracking down. But like,
yeah,
like I think artists tend to beat themselves up for some things that are like out of their control or they didn't know. Like it's
yeah,
easy to look back and be like, I should have known, but you know now. So just keep moving forward. Because I think a lot of people feel the pressure, especially thinking now that I just turned 25. I have to do everything by 30. I'm like,
yeah.
no. There's so many
But
people with an amazing career like
Yeah,
later in life.
yeah. Well, it's interesting because I'm gonna turn 34 in May,
Mhm.
and like I'm just sitting here like, man, I am so old. Like I don't, just one of those things. Like I'm sitting here like I'm so old. I feel like I'm behind the eight ball because like I'm at this point where I'm seeing a lot of the guys that I went to high school with and college with. They're married, having kids, and like getting promotions and having all these big career things. And I'm like, man, I'm 34, about to turn 35. Or no, wait, 33, about to turn 34. Holy crap. Wow. I was just like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any kind of sense. What is going on right now? But okay, so I'm 33, getting ready to turn 34. And I'm just sitting here like, man, I feel like I'm so behind the eight ball. And then over the holiday, I had a conversation with my dad. He's like, no, you're not behind the eight ball. It just takes that long. Like, you, for whatever reason, you have this false image in your head of what success is.
Mhm.
But when you're out doing what you love, it takes a while, So I don't know where I'm going with that one, but I just felt like it was something that needed to be said.
Oh, I feel you. Thank you for sharing, though.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's just kind of like success comes at it on its own pace. And when it does, you just need to be ready to grab it and take it for a ride.
Yeah,
So,
and more importantly, like everyone defines their own success. Like if your
yeah.
success is 1,000 streams, it shouldn't be because that's a tough game, man. But like if your success is like X thing, like make it something that you're actually proud of. Like for me, like last year, my success was to get like an engaged fan base
Mhm.
all over the world, like will be more outward facing, and that worked for me. Like, and I didn't think I would do it in the ways I did, but that goal of like, oh, I'm engaging with people and really talking to them as people, like those kinds of goals are the ones that to me are fruitful rather than like looking at other people and like looking at my peers and be like, why don't I have 100,000 streams? Whatever. Like that's just a number. But like engage fans, that's like the long-term investment. I mean, this is just pure musician talk, but anything in
Yeah.
life, like what's the thing that's going to make you successful, happy, fulfilled in the long term? It may not be like the numbers or the promotion or
Yeah.
XYZ. Those are all kind of arbitrary things to pick.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
and it that I definitely 100% agree with you. Like just figure, and that's one thing a lot of young musicians should figure out is what is success to them.
Yeah.
And is it, like you said, having an engaged fan base, or releasing an out like releasing an album, is that considered a success to you? Like, just everybody has their own differencing of opinions and what have you. So for 2021, since you set out 2020 was to get more of an engaged fan base, what would be a success for you in 2021?
I think having people know my story better because this is a again artist versus musician. Like I make music I'm proud of, I'm writing music I'm proud of, but learning that lesson of people aren't going to pay attention to you unless they know you. So
Mhm.
this year is all about like having people get to know me. So I'm doing a lot more video content. I'm on
Mhm.
TikTok, hot button word for musicians. Like just try it out. This goes for anything. It can be any social media platform, but just do it regularly and see what happens. That's the same reason why I'm doing Twitch. I just want people to know me regularly, and
Nice.
get to know me and my music, and like hopefully I bring a little light to their day. And just more video content in general. So YouTube is in my eyeball. That's the one that's like, that's the most intimidating because that's
Yeah.
and like all of my a lot of my favorite musicians and people I looked up to when I was like in middle school, like they were YouTube stars, right? So
Yeah.
I'm like, ooh,
Well,
that's the weird thing myself there.
and since we're kind of on the topic of social media,
Yeah.
YouTube is like, I don't want to say it's scary, but it's such a big monster at this point that it's going to take a lot of work and emphasis to really make any kind of a ripple on YouTube,
Exactly.
because there are people that have been doing it for 10, 15, yeah, 10, 15 years at this point. Came out in 2005. There's people that have been doing it for a while. And like you brought up TikTok, TikTok is so organic right now.
Yeah,
It is
exactly.
ridiculous. Like I literally post 2 or 3 times a day, and I just started doing it on Tuesday when I got back from New Mexico. And like my following has grown. Well, I mean, I didn't have a following prior to Monday, but like my following has grown a lot more than I thought it would, So it's one of those things where it's like focus on where the organic reach and the rest of it will come.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the
Oh,
day, like people just forget that. Again, if you're gonna be an artist, really big thing. People fall in love with people, not
yeah,
necessarily music. Music's an important too. I'm not saying don't make good music because if you don't have anything to show for it,
yeah,
then you're an empty artist. But like, you need to have a personality. You need people to
yeah,
connect with you, and more than that advice for like young musicians. Like, just be yourself. Like, my vocal coach has this great metaphor. It's called the ride. Like every single musician, every single artist, they are a ride at the amusement park. And yeah, you may like one person may not like your ride, but once you find the people who do and engage with you, like you take them on that ride, and that's how they keep coming back for more.
yeah.
To like have that sort of self awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's ultimately why I started the podcast in general was because Live and Amplified as a brand doesn't really have a face or never had a face because it was all focused on the indie musicians. And I was sitting there looking at it and I'm like, we need something that people can connect to, whether it's me, whether it's Jeff, my audience, like whatever it is. But like you look at the success of a lot of like we'll go back on the YouTube train, but you look at the success of a lot of these big YouTube channels, it's because on the side they had a vlog, so people were connecting to the team behind the channel or whatever it is. So just kind of having that ability for people to connect to you just speaks volumes and is going to help you immensely. Like, yeah, your music is a bonus. They want to connect with you, the person.
Yeah.
So, and so you'd mentioned that you started a TikTok. How's that kind of been for you? Did you find that come natural? They're producing content for TikTok comes natural to you, or is it still a weird animal that?
This goes back to what I said before about like you just have to try things.
Yeah,
I was so afraid of TikTok for so long.
yeah,
Because I was like, another social media platform, the whole like,
yeah,
how do I want to learn it? Again, I was really just lazy. But I think what really changed the game for me was the duet feature.
uh-huh.
Especially like, I can't really jam with people necessarily.
Mhm.
Like, I can't go to a jam session like I used to. Like, New York's
Yeah,
full of them. And the fact that I get to like jam with people all like I just made this duet where I played these fancy chords on piano and like totally blew up because people like lush chords. And like
yeah,
there's
yeah,
such an appreciation for that. And like people have been writing songs over it. And like that sort of collaboration is beautiful to me. And I think that's where I found my personal voice on TikTok. And it goes back to like my mission of like I just want to bring people together and bring a little bit of joy. So if that's like a piano chord progression that you can write a song over, like some people reach out to me like, "Can I use this for a song?" I'm like, "Of course you can, like for
yeah,
sure." Like
yeah,
it's awesome. Like that level of connection, like I like that's what sold me on like why TikTok works. It works for me as a musician, me as like a person. Like that's the joy I want to bring to people. And it's just crazy. And like you're right, like it just blew up. You're like, oh, I made this in 10 minutes and here you go.
yeah.
Right. You never know what's gonna blow up. I always
And
that's
I think the whole key behind social media in general is just being authentic to being your authentic self. Like that's what people gravitate towards. It's when you start being this fake personality or this fake persona, that's when people like, yeah, they'll tune in for a little bit, but once they realize, oh, this isn't who the person is, then they kind of start to regress a little bit.
exactly.
So, um, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time, even though we did have a nice little interruption there that kind of threw off everything. But
Yeah.
we rebounded quickly. I was really surprised with that. Like usually when if the internet craps out and there's like a prolonged thing, like the flow kind of gets thrown off. But I think we picked up really quickly. Um, so for anybody that wants to listen to your music, where can they find you online, and where can they follow you?
So you can find me at Wind Meets West, all the social media platforms. Wind, like the
Yep.
meet, like you're meeting someone, and West, like the West Coast. You
Nice.
can find my music there. Instagram and TikTok are my biggest social media platforms. Facebook's, you can follow me on Facebook if you want, I guess. I also have a website, windmeetswest.com, and you can find my music on all the streaming platforms. So my latest single, Technicolor, is the one I love, is dear to my heart because it's the newest one. But all my other songs are on there as well. But you can find it on all streaming platforms. Thank you, DistroKid. You're the best. So that's where you can find my stuff.
am I officially the old guy that still plays around on Facebook? Like, is nobody on Facebook anymore? Is that
It's just
where the world?
Facebook algorithm is shit. So
Uh,
not really introducing people to. But I mean, it's an important platform, but
yeah,
I like TikTok more. But
yeah. Well, I'm kind of at that point now where I'm gonna because Zoom only allows you to like stream to one platform. You can't do like the multi-platform streaming. And so I've recently been looking at StreamYard to kind of go over there and because you can stream up to 3 different platforms and I want to give that like a month try and see how different it is to see if it like helps grow the fan base or the following or the whatever because I definitely like Facebook is where the core of our fans are, but I feel like I'm missing something by either not being on Twitch or not being on. Well, I guess you can live stream to TikTok, can't you?
I think you can. I don't know how, but
Yeah, like, I just feel like we're missing the boat by not being on other platforms as well. But because where Facebook is or where our core fan base is, it's just kind of like, yeah,
yeah. I mean, if your core family is on Facebook, that's awesome. So
yeah,
a lot of my friends have gotten. This is another tangent. We keep going tangent, but I love it. This is why you're a great interview, right? One of my friends is getting like a significant fan base from streaming to Facebook groups like Quarantine
okay,
Karaoke and like those kinds of people. So Facebook's still there. It's still
yeah.
happening. But
Well, I think Facebook's just it it's going to do something in the next couple of years to kind of regenerate itself, whether it's
yeah,
I don't know by YouTube or I don't they got to get something they've got to kind of find themselves and I
mhm.
think Instagram is what's really keeping them afloat like the ability to kind of dual post to Facebook and Instagram really helps
That's true. Yeah.
but if anybody listening has needed advice on how to manipulate social media this podcast has been for you.
What's the
um
game that people forget about? And they're like, social media is stupid. I'm like, no, like that's
no
your
it's especially for music right now during the quarantine
yeah.
social media has should have been your lifeblood like yeah. So you got a Twitch stream, I believe you said coming up on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
What's your Twitch handle for that?
Wind West. Still Wind meets West.
Still
Yeah.
Wind. So you were lucky enough to kind of get everything as Wind meets West.
Yeah. And that's like another hesitation. Like, should I really change my name? But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where it's like social media has been around so long. It's like, can you still get your name? Like if you've been branding yourself as one name for the entire time and all your social media handles line up so where it's at Wind meets West the entire way across, it's like, man, if I change my name, do I run the risk of not getting the same handle across the board? But you um, but first off, I want to thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Having me. It was great.
Before we leave, though, I do want to ask you one question.
Mhm.
What is your creative process? Like when you sit down to write music, are you very free spirited? Like are you one of the writers that kind of uh, when you're out in the car you get hit with something, or are you very more structured with it? Like okay, I only have from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. to write. That's when I get creative. Like what's kind of your process?
So I used to be I only write when I'm inspired. But lately, because I've been working with a lot more artists and like I'm a fully fledged producer in my own
Yeah,
studio,
yeah,
I just kind of sit whenever. Usually I get a gut feeling at the beginning of the day. I'm like, there's a song in the air.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I can write anytime.
Okay.
But because I write for my job, I write songs for a company. But when it's like a song that I personally am proud of, I'll like just hop in the room and start making sounds. Especially like my new synthesizer. It's great. But yeah, in general, I'll just try to come up with like an idea, whether it be that's like how I write songs. I attach myself to one idea. It could
Mhm.
be a lyric, it could be a melody, it could be chords, and I just like really milk it for what it's worth, and then just keep hammering it, and then the song just comes out of me. I try to get like the idea of a song out in like under an hour and like have the bones of it. And then from there I'll wait like a few days like, do I still like this song? And if I don't like it, I just cut it. Like
Yeah.
I'll leave it on my drive. But if I do like it, then I'll keep developing it.
Yeah.
Especially lately I've been working with a lot of other artists. So
Mhm.
I've been bringing co-writers into the fold because I've realized like I can do everything. Doesn't mean I should do everything. So
Yeah.
I like bring them into the writer's room and like we just like start the hour by like talking about our lives. And then we head into the process. So it's just gotten a lot more, I don't know. Yeah, you're right, more deliberate. Versus
Yeah,
before it's like, I have a song idea in the car, I need to run home and like write it now. Like it's too much. It's too much.
yeah.
Just sit down and write it. If you don't like it, you just throw it away. It's fine.
I got you. I got you. It's perfect. And then outside of music, what do you do? Or are you 100% music all the time right now?
I'm a full-time musician, so I teach and produce and write. But I guess my other hobbies are making coffee, as you can maybe see from earlier. But yeah, that's my other. As my friends have said, you need a hobby outside of music, and you can't just do music all the time. So I guess it's been coffee now. It's
Nice.
kind of cook. I wish I was cooking, but I get so lazy. I don't know. I like cooking, but
You know that it's funny you bring that up. It's like I used to like really be into cooking, and that was just kind of like my thing to get away. And now that I live by myself, it's kind of like, man, I live by myself. Who am I trying to impress? Like,
you yourself.
no, it's like I'm not like everything I have is for like a family of four, six, or eight, and it's just kind of like, man, if I make this, I'm gonna have to want to eat it for the next week. Do I
Yeah,
really want to go through the effort of making this? Just eat the same thing for the next week. But
real.
you know, that's my mindset, and it's not the right mindset. I need to get back out there and start doing something outside of live and amplified. So,
Yeah.
but once again, I want to thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Um, Before we leave, hit them with the social media one more time.
Wind meets West. Wind meets like we're meeting someone West. All the social media platforms. Please follow me. Yeah, I'd love to
Awesome.
chat with you.
Awesome. Once again, thank you so much. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will catch you guys later.